guys, welcome back to another episode of Just Three Brothers. This is going to be a mini today, and we're going to be discussing Disney Plus's firing of Gina Carano. In this episode, we're just going to talk about our viewpoints on the situation, and by no means does this represent the fan base's perspective on it. We realize that everyone has completely different opinions on the matter, but we'll just let Kat take it away.
Okay, so this is kind of a hot button issue right now. It's obviously in the news really, really recently now. If as far as people, if they don't know what exactly happened, she had made a tweet that was basically comparing the strife of conservatives in today's social climate to the Jews from the Holocaust. Now, although at face value, I think that this is, obviously a very kind of troubling post. The debate today is, should you be fired for having a opinion on a social matter from Twitter or any kind of other social media? Should you be fired because you have a certain take on a polarizing view? For this one in general, I think that in a vacuum, I think that the statements that she made and the comparisons she made were really, really dumb. I think that it's really, really a bad kind of idea to go down the route of comparing the strife of conservatives to Jews in the Holocaust. I think it's a bit of a far cry. But the thing that I do think is that it's important to have discussion without cancel culture swooping in and kind of destroying people's careers. So but you have to look at the over encapsulating kind of context, right? So this isn't the first time she's made a really kind of bad take as far as a tweet going. All of her views kind of fall kind of in a similar fashion. She's had anti-mask views and tweets with this whole COVID thing. She's had voter ID fraud tweets, basically talking about how, the election's being stolen by Biden. Once you kind of look at them at surface value altogether, you kind of start to see the picture being painted that she has a lot of bad takes and she's saying some really stupid shit online. I always find this a little bit ironic coming from Disney firing her, just to the fact that it's like, if you look at some of the older Disney cartoons, there's a lot of anti-Semitic stuff. Donald's kind of wearing Nazi stuff. So it's like, this you, Disney? Kind of funny that you're firing someone over this. But another thing I'd really like to talk about as well is the fact that Ben Shapiro recently had picked her up for starring in a movie for Daily Wire. Now, a lot of people, there's two sides of it. They initially were saying cancel her off the Mandalorian. That's fine. They can have that opinion. But now they've kind of switched the thing and it's basically, free Gianna kind of thing. So it goes to show that the mom mentality is probably even worse than, her tweets in general. I think hive mind kind of activity is really, really bad. I think it's a toxic environment when you have a group of people that are all kind of bandwagoning and jumping down people's throats over stuff. But the one thing I will say is that, and another thing I'd like to talk about is Ben Shapiro's recent video. I think he released it yesterday. I have a lot of issues with it fundamentally, although I do think that he has a lot of interesting takes, and I think that his political discourse in general is really good. I disagree with almost everything he talks about fundamentally, but I do like Ben Shapiro because he's able to kind of he's able to explain a different perspective, and I think he does it quite well, even though I disagree with it. But I love to see a different side. That's something that always kind of gets my dick hard. But the one thing I disagreed with his video fundamentally is, number one, something that Ben Shapiro does a lot that I really don't like is that he does this whole, like, I'm your neighborhood Jewish friend. So I'm the envoy of all Jews because I wear a yarmulke, and I'm the one that can tell you if this was bad or not. That's actually not how it works, Ben. You are not the envoy of all Jewish people. Just because, even he said in his video, he's the most Jewish person he knows. Like, that's such a weird statement to even make. I think that quantifying how Jewish you are is kind of a weird thing in general. But this doesn't make you the arbiter of the Jewish take. So, Ben, you might want to sit down on this one as far as that goes. Number two, for someone that's always talking about cancel culture, it's really funny that you brought up Pablo, the Mandalorian's old Twitter, comparing Germany cages to the kid bucket cages of modern day. You talk about cancel culture. I don't know why you'd bring that up unless you wanted him canceled. I know you're making the comparison about how Disney didn't take action towards him, but I mean, if you're going to stand for something, you might as well be consistent. basically every take you had in that video, Ben, I think it was really, really a bad take. The fact that you're saying that like her tweets are not controversial. I think you did touch on it a little bit when you said that comparing conservative strife to the Jewish strife during the Holocaust is a far cry. Like I agree with you there, but to say that her tweet wasn't controversial, I think is a little bit silly, especially when you compare it to the other two tweets she's made. The idea with voter fraud on surface value, voter fraud doesn't seem like it would be that hot of a take. But when you look at her past tweets and you understand what she's trying to say, basically that you know the voters are under attack and conservatives may not win again, you get to understand kind of her views. So I think that that's another L you'll have to take on that one as well. Um, like I say, and then you decide to get her on board for a movie for Daily Wire. That's cool if you want to do that take. But people are saying that, oh, she's punching up. I don't think that she's punching up when you look at the grand scheme of things. She was on one of the most popular shows on one of the most popular platforms from one of the most popular, most expensive companies on the planet. And now she's on a Daily Wire movie. I think that it's comparing apples to oranges. I think she made a really stupid decision with these tweets and getting fired from Disney, but I'd love to see what the other brothers think.
My opinion on the whole firing situation is that she made a poor decision. And obviously, I think that's one thing she had in common with the old president of the United States is I thought he did really well for his democracy and for everything that they stood for finances, capitalism in general. But I wish he would have just stayed the fuck off social media. And that's another thing that I wish Gina would have just stayed off social media because she literally was in line to be on the Rangers, the new Star Wars series. She was frontlining to be in the Mandalorian with 3 with all the script completely written already, and it's frustrating that she just had to put her boot in her mouth. Um, like I say, I understand that she's trying to be a voice for the conservative people or the Republican people, but I feel like it didn't do anything because now she's going to be forgotten about within a week or two. She was on one of the biggest platforms for one of the arguably the biggest franchise that Disney has, and that's Star Wars, and now she's not going to be able to be a voice for anything anymore. Her MMA career is done, so that's millions of viewers there that she's lost, and then like hundreds of millions of people have watched Mandalorian, so it just goes to show now she's basically going to have no voice whatsoever. So I think that, like, I agree with the whole cancel culture situation, and I think that's kind of the day and age we're living in now. But the fact of the matter is, she should have just kept her mouth shut. I don't agree with necessarily all of her tweets. There are some things that I can understand from her points of view, but I just think she should just stay off social media. And I think that all people really, when they're in a position in Hollywood or whether it's directing, acting, screenwriting, I think they should just stay off the social media. Keep your opinions to yourself. Like, you don't have to you know, go run rampant and shove your feelings and your opinions down people's throats because there's enough people doing that on other platforms that Hollywood doesn't need to do it. They just need to mind their own business.
So I'm kind of the opinion that people should be able to kind of say whatever they want, whether or not it's a good opinion or not, whether it's a right opinion. I think people should be entitled to be able to say whatever they want. Um, and I think cancel culture can be really, really negative on society in general, just this mob mentality that people can have. But I find it was really strange just the fact that Disney decided to fire her at such just it seems kind of coincidental that they decided to fire her as she's getting all this flack. If they say as they did that they claimed that they wanted to fire her for quite some time now, it just seems a little interesting that they finally decided to pull the plug as soon as she starts getting flack on social media such as Twitter, especially when at a time where Jon Favreau is, he's already almost done the 3rd season writing the script. It just seemed like a really bad time for Disney to do it. And it's almost like they only did it because of the fact that this mob on Twitter was coming after her. So I don't know. It just seems like very coincidental in my opinion, but at the same time, I don't really find myself getting involved in politics too often. I haven't seen the show myself, so I can't say whether or not I like her character or anything like that. But I feel as though even though I don't necessarily agree with some of her opinions on social media, I think again everyone should be entitled to have their own opinion.
Okay, so here's the there's kind of two sides of this coin. So I agree with you in the sense that people should be able to say whatever they want. If you have an opinion, you should be able to voice that, especially in the climate that we have now with social media. I think that the ability for everyone to do that, that's perfectly fine. But I also stand by the fact that if you shit in your own bed, you should have to sleep in it. If you say stupid shit on social media, you have to understand that if you're tied to a brand or a company, you may get flack for that. And the thing with that as well is I think that I do think that you're right. It's coincidental that, you know, the script was written and it was a kind of a, it seems like the outcry was the reason for her firing. But you have to remember that this isn't the first stupid thing she said on Twitter. And it feels like, based on from what I've researched and seen, they've been telling her to stop doing this for a while. Disney has been telling her to stop making these kind of tweets and stuff. And it's on the fact that it's like, if you're going to be stupid enough to continue making these polarizing kind of controversial tweets, I think that you need to realize that, yeah, you do have free speech and you're allowed to say whatever you want. And I'm with you 100%, but you have to realize that when you have free speech, there are consequences when you say stuff. So my take on it is, you know, what it really comes down to really is, should you be fired because you're an idiot? I think that that's something that a lot of people maybe, you know, think that is kind of an odd way of looking at it. But I think that when you're tied to a brand, right? Like, let's say, you know, a business I have, I don't want my employees to be able to just say stupid shit and then just think that they could come in and serve ice cream or serve smoothies. That's not how my business runs. We don't do that here. Like, you are going to say something stupid on social media. You see it all the time where this was even before cancel culture. When you'd see these, you know, fast food employees like putting their feet in the lettuce and doing all sorts of stupid shit and taking pictures. It's like, yeah, you're dumb. And that's a dumb thing to do. You're fired. Clearly you're fired. This is a business, right? I think that it was, you know, again, in a vacuum, the things that she said, I think they were dumb things to say for sure. But it's like you get a really broad kind of brushstroke kind of feel for her opinions in general. And she just seems to be the type of person that probably, although talented and in MMA and in her acting career, I'll give her that. She's a talented person. You're allowed to have a stupid take and say a lot of stupid shit, but you're gonna be socially crucified in a sense if you're gonna do that sort of thing.
The thing I'm frustrated with is the fact that that if she would have had the opposite view, you know what I mean, from a Democratic standpoint in the States, nothing would have happened with it. Pablo actually tweeted, and this was in 2017, right as soon as the Trump administration took over, basically that the Nazis, there was the Chinese Communist Party, then the Nazis, and then Make America Great Again. But I mean, and if Gina would have done something like that with Biden, I feel like that could have got her basically in the same boat that she's already in now. Do I agree with her stance on things? Not completely. There's things I agree and disagree with, but the biggest one for me is that her post, I feel like it had truth to it, the first sentence, because it is true that if their neighbors and stuff didn't, like, you know what I mean? If there was an uprising and no one stood for that in Germany and all the Germans pushed back, it would have been different. But it was basically, they did make them hate the Jews, and that's why it was so easy to round them up. But comparing that to how that's like being a Republican in the United States nowadays, that's insanity. That
That's
doesn't
the
even make
point. And I
sense.
think that was why it was such a gross statement. Number one, I think that, like you say, I can see where she was going with the statement and bringing light to this kind of other side to it, like the whole, like the neighborhood side of it. But it's like, what a stupid comparison. How could you ever compare sad boys in the conservative area to Jewish people in the Holocaust? I think that that's a pretty gross comparison, especially when you consider that, that doesn't really rub people the right way, especially when you have, Jewish people today that have already had to deal with, hearing stupid statements about the Holocaust and stuff like the Holocaust didn't even exist. And now we have, the thing that is kind of encapsulating as well is she is a celebrity. She's someone who is in a show that everyone loves. She's getting a lot of traction. She was in a lot of projects like Deadpool and that sort of thing. So it's like, you're supposed to be an idol. And I think that she could have been a really strong idol for young women as well, because of the fact that it's like she was in the MMA. She's, jacked. It's really good to see these kind of unique stars come to the forefront. Like when Ronda Rousey first came to the forefront, and she was a a massive idol for young women. I think that Gina could have easily done that. But again, you have to take your own biases and put them in the wayside sometimes and just shut up. You have to sometimes just shut the fuck up and not put your opinion on Twitter. And that's the worst part here is that, but again, just to take it back to the Ben Shapiro video that was released yesterday, I just want to reiterate, I think that Ben Shapiro is a very interesting person. I think that although I've already stated before, I don't agree with a lot of the sentiments from that video and just his opinion in general, but I do like how he is able to voice his opinion. He has a silver tongue. He's very quick on his feet with how he presents this sort of stuff. But I think it's appalling that he's trying to essentially say that it was cancel culture that did this. He's someone who has famously said, when you are in a contractual agreement with an employer and employee, you can leave at any time. Just the same as if you do something stupid, your employer can fire you. So I would love to see, Ben's take if one of his employees or one of his columnists made tweets like this, being essentially, in his own words, the Jewish envoy and basically the Jewish voice. I would love to see how he would have reacted if one of his employees did that. So it's just kind of funny that of all people, I think that he's a little bit out of touch when it comes to a lot of kind of modern day kind of things like that. So as interesting as I think that Ben Shapiro is, and I think a lot of times he's able to kind of explain his point in a really precise way. I think that he's got to take a massive L for this one, because that video was a super bad take and almost as bad of a take as her tweets were.
That's the thing. Honestly, like the first few tweets that she had, I like, it's free speech. I don't mind. The thing that got me was literally the last comparison between the Republicans and Jews. That's what literally did it for me, because I totally agree with free speech. We should be able to say whatever you want, but like you said, you also have to accept the backlash when something like that happens. And she got fired. She lost her job. She probably lost a huge hefty salary. Obviously they're not going to pay her out for anything. Like, it literally shoved her foot in her mouth, and because of that, now she's going to have to suffer the repercussions of that. And that might be working for the Daily Wire, which, yeah, like, is a huge step down from being on Disney and Star Wars. So at the end of the day, it's unfortunate what happened. Like I said, if she would have just cut those last three sentences out of there, I could actually, I resonate with that. I understand what she's saying. Like, neighbors do turn on each other. There was stuff in Canada where people were calling the cops on people for, having people over for Christmas time, but then, the government could go off to Hawaii and Honolulu, and that was completely fine. So I get it, neighbor turning on neighbor. I understand that, but the whole thing is, you can't compare anything to concentration camps where people are literally being killed by millions of people, and that, like, millions by the millions. It just doesn't make sense to me. It was a stupid tweet, and she got her just desserts for it. We're gonna wrap this video up. Thank you again for liking, commenting, subscribing. If you want more content like this, hit that thumbs up button and ring that bell. Anyway, have a good day and catch you on the flip side. Peace.